up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This is episode number 327. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and joining me on the line, the Detroit trash can basketball legend himself, Luis Scott-Vargas.
I'm not paying you for that. Anyway. Hello, Marshall.
I don't think you understand how bets work.
It was a joke, not a bet. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the show, Luis. How's your week been? How are things?
My week has been good. It's hectic. We're in the stretch of back-to-back weekends being gone, so just means that we're busy. But the show is my number one first priority, so I made sure to record it.
I certainly appreciate that. So we've got some cool stuff lined up for this show, including a special guest who I'll introduce momentarily here. Before I do, I want to remind you that that Limited Resources is brought to you by channelfireball.com each and every week. Make sure you check out Channel Fireball for a host of awesome free content, as well as a full selection of singles, sealed product, and supplies. You can get it all at Channel Fireball. It's kind of your one-stop shop. You also can sell your cards if you are a drafter and you're looking to offload some of those draftwares that tend to pile up and maybe turn them into more booster packs. You'll even get a hefty bonus attached if you're going to trade in your cards. You can also just get a cash there too, though. So make sure you check out Channel Fireball. Also, the show's brought to you by you. The Patreon is the way to support the show directly. And I've got a couple of giveaways lined up here, Luis, for this week. I talked about it last week, and I've got our normal Cracker Pack Rares plus LR gift pack, which includes an LR t-shirt, a sticker, a pin, and a couple packages of LR sleeves. I've got that lined up, and I've also got a couple of other things. I've got some stuff that I've been meaning to give some of our patrons. I'm going to give one of them away today, and then a few more things next week as well. So the first one is the LR gift pack, and that is going to go to Angelito Cruz, and it looks like Angelito lives in Japan at the moment. So congratulations, Angelito. If you could send me an email, lr@lrcast, and let me know what size of t-shirt you'd like, I will get that thing sent off to you. And then I've got another giveaway. So when we were at PAX, I got this thing, which is now falling. Here we go. It's a Battle for Zendikar survival kit, and it comes in this like kind of lunchbox thing, and
that was very cool.
Yeah, it's neat. It's got like a deck box in it. It's got this Battle for Zendikar
ability to make you survive an Eldrazi attack.
Yeah, I'm also slightly skeptical. But it's got some Penny Arcade pins in there. It's got a deck box. It's got a dice. It's even got a granola bar, some basic lands, and an inflatable water bottle, all branded Battle for Zendikar. And I'm going to give this away to a listener, and that listener is Kevin Levesque. Kevin, congratulations, you have won yourself a survival kit, and I'll be sending that to you. And I'm going to throw a couple of LR stuff in the survival kit for you too, and I'll be sending that down to you as well. So thank you again to everybody who supports the show. If you want to be eligible for these type of giveaways, all you have to do is become a patron at patreon.com/limited resources. It doesn't matter what level you're at, you will be entered in these type of giveaways. Okay, so we're going to skip the Patreon question of the week because I've actually got about 10 of them for our special guest, who is a Platinum Pro Player of the Year for 2014-2015 with 2 Pro Tour top 8s and 3 GP top 8s, including 2 wins. He's a member of Team Face-to-Face Games. It's Mike Sigrist. Siggy, how's it going, buddy? Welcome to Limited Resources.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're happy to have you on. We had a little conversations going back for a while now, and we were able to sort everything out and get you on the show.
I'm going to set up the show.
You what? I couldn't hear you, Luis.
Our conversations, you mean the last hour trying to set up the show?
We have had some technical difficulties setting up the show. We decided to just press on. If the audio isn't quite up to the standards that you expect, I do apologize for that. I'm going to do my best to fix it. But I wanted, I thought this is a really good opportunity to get Mike on the show here, and I wanted to, hear his thoughts on Limited, as he is quite the limited guru. So, Mike, I'm just going to throw you right into the deep end here, and we're going to do a couple of crack-a-packs, okay? And so this is, a tradition on the show where we open up a pack and then dissect it as a pack one, pick one, and decide what card we'd take. But of course, a lot of the value from a crack-a-pack comes from discussing, which kind of cards we'd consider, how close it is, that kind of thing. So we're gonna just go into an Oath of the Gatewatch booster here. This was given to us by Frank in Detroit. Thank you, Frank. Do you feel the pressure right now, Siggy? You're in the hot seat, buddy.
Oh yeah.
All right, so let's get kicking right away here. We've got Shoulder to Shoulder is our first common. Siggy, why don't you just give me your thoughts on these as we go through?
It's a solid support card. It's actually a card I don't like as much as most people. Okay. I tend not to draft aggressive decks as much as most people do, so a card like that's going to be better when you have a bunch of aggressive low curve creatures, and it's not something I'm typically looking to do.
Okay. Next card is Slip Through Space. Of course, the blue sorcery with Devoid and makes your creature unblockable until end of turn, and you can draw a card.
Yeah, it's a role player in like blue-red Surge decks. It's a 1 mana cycle card, so you can put it anywhere really. Can trigger Devoid things like Nettle Drone, Molten Nursery, Sky Scour, stuff like that.
I wouldn't be a fan of putting it in my deck after one pick, though.
No, I would not be.
Yeah, neither of these are really under consideration for first pick here, right? No. Okay. What about Ma of Kozilek? That was one that Luis and I looked at the stats on and looked at the activated ability when we first saw it, and we're both thinking, yeah, this card's pretty solid, but for some reason it seems to have not really quite lived up to at least how I thought it was going to be. What are your thoughts on the Ma?
I actually really like Ma, but I tend to take lands pretty high, the colorless lands pretty highly, so it's usually not a problem for me to activate it. Usually, if you're not going to take this card early because it needs the lands really to do its thing. Right. But I like creatures that do two things: block and attack, like very well, and it seems to do that. So
it certainly does.
Yeah.
Okay. Witness the End is next. That's the 3 and a black. Target opponent exiles 2 cards from his or her hand and loses 2 life. Where are you at on Witness?
It's okay. It sometimes makes my deck. I like to play that one over like Myers Malice and aggressive black-red decks.
Okay.
Decks like, again, that I'm trying to have a very all-in Devoid strategy, like the Sky Scour, Nettle Drone. It's just kind of a bunch of incremental, small amounts of damage that add up to win the game.
Okay. As an aside, since we are doing a crack-a-pack, we're clearly in a booster draft, but how do you feel about it in sealed deck, if you've had any experience with it?
Yeah, Mind Rots are great in sealed deck, especially in this format where the curve is pretty high, at least in Battle for Zendikar, so people are incentivized to make all their land drops. They don't really hold lands, so you can usually get pretty high-quality cards with Mind Rots in sealed deck.
Nice. Netcaster Spider.
I really like Netcaster Spider as a blocker. I like to play for long games, so Netcaster Spider can block almost everything that flies in this format. I don't like to take it that early, but I do like it as a role player in my green decks.
Okay. Yeah. Like, what are the before I go to the next one, what are some of the cards that you're looking to first pick? That are common.
Oblivion Strike, Isolation Zone. Boulder Salvo, Blinding Drone, those are probably the ones I first pick the most.
As usual, green doesn't have a common you really want to first pick.
No, yeah. I mean, that's pretty much the trend with me, too. I tend to avoid green sometimes in some sets. But, yeah, Oblivion Strike is the card I'm looking for.
Okay. Slaughter Drone is our next one. That's the 1 and a black 2/2 that can get Death Touch with a colorless mana.
Yeah, I really like Slaughter Drone. Again, I want my cheap creatures to be able to trade up at some point. If I draw them later in the game, it'll have an impact even then because it has Death Touch later in the game, and it's still a Grizzly Bear early in the game. It can deal some damage. If you curve out nicely with it, a removal spell, you can deal 4, 6, 8 damage with it.
Tajuru Pathwarden, the 4 and a green 5/4 Vigilance Trample ally.
He's okay. I think more people like him more than I do in general. He's kind of replacement level to me. The higher you get up in the curve with creatures, the more replaceable they are. So
sure,
he is a good 5-drop, but I don't really care if my 5-drop's a 5/4 trample or a 5/5, no ability.
Sure. And since you're running not that many 5s in general, then that slot is pretty contested.
And as usual, if you take a 5 early, it just means later you have to take a 2 over a better 5.
Absolutely,
sure. Yep. All right, here's a solid little creature, Zada's Commando, the 2/1 first striker for 1 and a red that has cohort, does the damage.
Yeah, I like Zada's Commando. I'm not usually looking to first pick it, but sure. It's one of the best spread commons, right? Like, there's only Boulder Salvo that's probably better than it.
Yeah, I think so. All right, now you said you like to take the colorless lands earlier than most. I'm assuming not first pick, but this does bring up an interesting question. We have a wastes here, just a good old wastes. Where are you at on wastes?
So I am usually willing to take the first one, like, in the 7th to 8th pick range if I'm already going in that direction, like the devoid direction, just because the first one is can be relatively important if you have if you end up getting an Evolving Wilds, or if you're green and have some kind of way to fetch it out or whatever. But after that, I don't want any of them. I mean, just the first one is something I will look to get just in case. But after that, I don't want any more.
Yeah, Luis, you and I had chatted about it, and we're kind of down on waste, right? Like the actual card waste, because I tend to agree with Siggy about when you need to pick up those colorless lines, you want to get them, but waste just seems to be like so low on my priority list.
It really is. It just destabilizes your mana base with not much upside besides activating or casting, maybe 2 to 3 cards in your deck, sometimes a few more. Whereas something like Unknown Shores or Holdout Settlement at least can help you splash, and it can make your mana better too. Crumbling Vestige is not a bad land. So
right.
Just there are enough good options, or like the Blighted Lands from Battle, where that you actually get an upside for playing your wastes.
Yeah, and yet I felt like there was going to be upside to playing waste that just never really quite materialized, right?
The number of times when I played more than one waste in my deck is not very high.
No, me neither. Our last common is Dwar Isle Avenger. Siggy, the 3/3 flyer for 5 with Surge for 2 and a blue. I'm assuming this is also not on the I want to first pick it list. And if that's the case, then we're kind of really looking to the uncommons and rares here, huh?
Yeah, it's definitely not a card I'm looking to first pick. It's not really. I mean, it's a 5-mana 3/3 flyer, which about 10 years ago was really good, but nowadays isn't all that impressive.
Yeah, everybody keeps snapping them up in the flashback drafts on Moto.
Having win readers and stuff.
My favorite thing in the world.
Yeah, people get really excited on their stream, like, yes! We opened the 3/3 flyer for 5, and I'm like, what is that about? And now I get it. All right, so let's move on to the uncommons here. We were just talking about upsides for wastes, and there was one kind of plant here that was trying to take advantage, and it's Walker of the Waste, the 4 and a colorless for a 4/4 with trample, and it gets +1/+1 for each land you control named wastes. This one never really came through for me. Have you had much success with Walker of the Waste?
Yeah, actually. I drafted a mono blue deck with, it was either 3 or 4 wastes in it, and I had 3 of those guys.
That's pretty good.
I mean, it's still, they were a little better because I have 2 or 3 cultivator drones, so you can ramp them out. Otherwise, they just become the Taraju Path Warden or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
But yeah, that deck was actually pretty good.
Build your own Reality Smasher.
Yeah.
I actually had a team sealed build where we got to put in 2 walkers and 4 wastes in Evolving Wilds.
Ooh,
that's great.
That's interesting to look out for in team sealed, huh? Like with 12 booster packs, you're going to get a significant number of wastes, and then if you happen to pick up the 3 Walker of the Waste, that could actually be something that pops up more often than in regular sealed or in draft there. Ooh, this next uncommon is a nice one, and it's one that Luis and I have liked since we spoiled it, but I think it's maybe even gone up for me lately. It's Baloth Null. We call it Baloth Null Drifter, and this guy, this card's always been very good, right? But I haven't really been a huge fan of the black-green archetype. But I find that I splash this thing a lot, and maybe I'm opening up a little more to black-green, but I just find fighting over the white and the black card specifically is starting to get a little tedious. Where are you at on Baloth Null? Is this in your range for a first pick?
Out of this pack so far, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, this pack's
I mean, I'm not going to be happy first picking it, but I'm not going to be that unhappy either. It's a really powerful card, and it's a gold card, so I'm kind of hesitant. But I'm going to, like, again, I want to draft the opportunity cost, and right now I don't really see anything in the pack that I want to take, and this card is clearly the most powerful by a lot, so I'm gonna take it. But I really like Balcony. If you watched at the Pro Tour, my first deck was quite bad, but I had 2 Balconies, and they did a lot of the work for me.
You get back all those bad creatures and run it back.
Yeah. Wholesome Rasa. It's like building your own Sphinx's Revelation.
Yeah. We're doing a lot of building here today.
No hyperbole.
Yeah. Now one interesting thing about Baloth Noldor, Siggy, is that it is black-green. And when you think of a normal gold card that you would pick one, you think, well, I'll explore the idea of going down the gold card's 2 colors, and if that happens to be open, you take a Cliffhaven Vampire, and then black-white is open. You're like, hey, this is great. Everything worked out. Is that the mentality you have with Baloth Null? Like, are you looking to be green-black if it's open?
I'm actually fine with green-black, but generally my green-black decks tend to be more than just green-black. I end up splashing colors. And just playing for a really long game. Baloth Null is, again, a high-impact card, so I have no problem splashing it in basically anything.
Okay. Next, or actually our last uncommon, I should say, is Immobilizer Eldrazi. That's the 1 and a red 2/1 with Devoid, and you can pay 2 in a colorless to make each creature with toughness greater than its power not be able to block this turn.
It's okay. It's a 2-drop with a decent ability, but it is a Goblin Piker, so I'm probably not going to take it that highly.
Have you found the red Devoid decks to be any merit, like red black Devoid aggro or anything like that?
They're okay. They have to really, really focus on Devoid, I think. Meaning, like, they need to get a lot of value out of cards like I mentioned earlier, Sky Scour, Nettle Drone. You need to, like, what ends up usually happening is you take all these actual colored cards, and then they make all your other cards worse. So you really just want to focus on having all your cards be colorless if you're going to do something like that.
Okay, our rare here. Oh, it's a nice one. We got a Deep Fathom Skulker here. That's the 5. We know what Luis wants to do. That's a 5 and a blue for a 4/4 with Devoid. And whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you can draw a card, and you can even pay 3 in a colorless to give a creature unblockable until end of turn. Siggy, is this the Windmill Slam here?
Yeah, out of this pack, absolutely. Just a really powerful creature, draws you a bunch of cards. I'm in.
It helps that this pack is, like, pretty weak overall.
Yeah, it's really not good pack, is it?
No, it's not at all.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it, it's kind of a crappy pack. And you know what that makes me think? It makes me think I want to do another one. So let's do another one. All right, so Deep Fathom Skulker's the pick out of that pack. Kind of not close, I would say. This next pack was given to me by Heidi Sitten. She says, this is kind of cool. She says she's a level 2 judge. I met her at GP Detroit. And she says, thank you, and I am the 3%. And I know what she's referring to. People that have been listening for a while. I know. So thank you for that, Heidi.
For sure.
It's good to know that you're out there. Okay. First one up. McKindy Aeronaut. 1/3 flyer for 1 and a white. What do you think about this one, Siggy? We'll kind of rapid fire these ones through.
It's just a role player and allies decks, support
How
decks.
Dare you? That card's great.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, it's a solid.
It's more playable in this block than it would be in a ton of places. There are lots of sets where this card would be much more borderline, but yeah, it's not fantastic.
It's interesting. Do you remember what Cuneo said about it, Luis? He said he thinks that 1/3 flyer for 2 is just good. Like that it's evergreen good, and that it's been good, and that we just need to accept that this is just a good card. Do you agree with
1/3 flyer for 2 is great, and 3/3 flyer for 5 is a bit. The world has passed it by.
Yeah, that's where we're at apparently.
That doesn't seem inaccurate. I guess one of the biggest complaints about modern limited formats that we hear from various guests, from people we talk to, is that if you don't play a 2-drop, sometimes you just die. And having 2-drop 1/3 flyers, which block early and chip over late, yeah, that makes sense. I could see that this is just a good card now.
Yeah. Abstruse Interference. Speaking of good cards, this is not one of them. Siggy, this card sucks, right?
Oh, it's awful. The only person I've ever seen play it is Jacob Wilson.
Did he get somebody with it?
I doubt it. I really doubt it. I don't know. I just think it's sat in the sand forever.
Maybe once, yeah. Akum Flameseeker, that's the 3/2 that has cohort. You get to rummage.
Yeah, I like that card. I actually haven't played with it much myself because I don't draft red ally decks that often, but I played against some pretty good red-white allies decks in testing, and they would, start out being pretty aggressive, get my life total low, and then they would just have that to start churning through their cards and find whatever they needed to kill me. Impressed me a lot.
Oh no, I can't even look at this next card. Siggy, this is actually, it's time for confessional here. So our next card is Untamed Hunger, which I'm going to read it because most people probably don't know what it does because it's completely unplayable. It's 2 and a black for an aura. It enchants a creature, and the creature gets +2/+1 and has menace. Siggy, I lost a game to this card. And I have yet to recover. I was doing the streamer showdown. I was playing against our friends from Loading Ready Run, and they warned me that this wasn't going to be pretty, and then beat me with Untamed Hunger, and I have yet to recover from it.
Did they put it on the aeronaut, the McKindy aeronaut?
I don't remember what they put it on. I actually don't. It's just all right. Moving along, I can't look at that card anymore.
Marshall, I battle with untamed hunger all the time. On my way to
I thought your hunger was more ceaseless than untamed. But Vines of the Recluse is next. That's the green combat trick that gives your creature +1/+2, and untaps it and gives it reach.
That's fine. I like cheap tricks like this. So I usually will play like one of them. Not always, I guess. Probably about 50% of the time I'll play one.
Okay. Well, hey, I'll tell you what. Our next one is Unnatural Endurance, which is very similar. Which one do you like better? Endurance is better, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think it's significantly better as well.
Yeah.
Oh, this brings up another good discussion. This is great. So one of the things that Luis and I had chatted about after having Cuneo on the show was Stalking Drone, which is a card, our next card here, versus Saddleback Lagak. Which one do you think's better?
Stalking Drone.
How close is it?
It's pretty close. Stalking Drone, again, it's a cheap creature that can stave off creatures later or attack through creatures later, and that's what I look for in my low curve creatures. I don't want them to just be irrelevant later in the game, and Stalking Drone, gives you value later, assuming you have the colorless lands. But I take the lands very highly, so this is like a 2-mana 3/4 to me or whatever.
Okay. Yeah, maybe that's because I now stand in opposition to Andrew Cuneo, Mike Sigrist, and Luis Scott-Vargas, which means I'm probably wrong. But I do think it's close either way.
I don't know if that's the lesson I would take from it, just because you disagree with us.
I don't know. I mean, I listen to the people whose opinions I care about, and when
I was saying the probably part.
Oh. Mike, I have to live with this like in constant. He has like great. 6 different ways to communicate with me. This is only one of them. Core Sky Climbers next. That's the 3/2 for 2 and a white. You can give it flying for 1 and a white.
Yeah, it's okay. It's a role player in an ally deck. It's fine in like green white support too. You can. I mean, it's a fine card.
Yeah,
role player. That's it. Yeah.
Reality Hemorrhage, 2 damage for 1 and a red at instant speed.
It's about as bad as the shocks get. It's just okay. I mean, you take it. I don't want to say you take it highly, but you take it usually in like the 5 to 6 range. There's not that many things that you really care about killing. There's a couple of like allies or something like Onduke War Cleric and stuff like that you'll kill, but you really don't really. The creatures just are scale up so big that you don't really need to kill 2 toughness things that often in this format.
Yeah, I find that to be the case as well. All right, we got another waste. As we move into our uncommons, we've got a Submerged Boneyard.
Submerged.
Yeah, that's the black-red tap. Dual land.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they just intercept. Yep. So do you take these duels very highly, or? No.
I mean, I hope they'll land in my lap like 7th or 8th pick if I happen to be in those colors. I don't necessarily need them though.
Yeah.
I will take them if I if I open Fall of the Titan and I look to be getting pushed out of red. I'll be much more likely to take a red dual land for that reason. But
sure. Thought Harvester. That's the 3 and a blue 2/4 with flying, And whenever you cast a colorless spell, you get to exile the top card of your opponent's library.
Yeah, good creature. Azure Drake's usually pretty good.
Yeah, I like that guy too.
5 mana 3/3 flyers may not have aged, but 4 mana 2/4 flyers are pretty good.
Yep. Especially with a little added bonus of turning on all your processing.
Yeah, it doesn't come up as often as, obviously in Triple Battle, but it is nice to have. One of the cool upsides is that you'll get really late processors because no one can use them. So if you just have a Thought Harvester, Merc Strider becomes a real card.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, people tend to avoid ingest strategies altogether now because of that, and you can really get you can get a Blight Herder pretty late because no one has any way to access it and all that stuff.
Void Grafter is our last uncommon. That's the 1 green-blue 2/4 with flash, and you can give one of your other creatures hexproof the turn you play it. Luis, you said you've been kind of warming up to green-blue a little bit. Is that right?
Oh yeah, I actually really like green-blue now. Again, I'm not saying this is a deck I get into very often, but getting a 4th or 5th pick Void Grafter, or just starting with the combination of drones, stalking, and blinding, makes me just like green-blue. I found that it actually has legs now.
What do you think about that, Siggy?
Yeah, I think it's okay. I don't really draft it that often. I want to have hard removal in my decks, and green-blue always lacks that, so I tend to avoid to be green-blue. I think this card in particular is pretty good. It's a way to get into green-blue, but I don't find myself in green-blue that often.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't disagree with what you said, Luis, but at the same time, I never ever draft green-blue, and I never lose to or even hardly ever play against green-blue, which is weird, right? Is it something I should do? Or?
If at the base level each deck's supposed to be drafted 10% of the time, right? If you just didn't know anything about these decks, and then all of a sudden you start adjusting the numbers, you're like, well, blue-white gets drafted way less than 10% because it's just much worse than the rest.
Sure.
Green-blue is still I would say less than 10% of the time. I think that white-black and white-red and blue-black just eat up such large swaths that I'm not saying I draft green-blue all that often. I just draft it more than before, which was 0.
Okay. Well, I'm still on 0. Hissing Quagmire is our rare. That's the black-green tap land that can become a 2/2 with Death Touch for 1 green-black. I'm assuming that these aren't high on your pick list either, Siggy, for first picks type stuff?
No, I evaluate them pretty close to just the other dual lands, honestly.
Well, this pack ended up not being amazing either. We've got Thought Harvester, Stalking Drone, Reality Hemorrhage. We do have the Void Grafter if we want to kind of get crazy up in here, but that's kind of it.
Yeah, I would probably just take Thought Harvester. I prefer to be blue than green.
Same.
Yeah, all right. So both of our packs were kind of obvious, but we did get a chance to at least to get to pick your brain on that, Siggy.
Well,
so that
one
was
of Laura's strengths is dissecting obvious packs, I found.
We do have to do that sometimes. Okay, so let's get into the main interview here, Mike. I wanted to really give us a little bit of breathing room here and start picking your brain. So let's just dive right in here. One of the first things that you mentioned when I asked you about things that we might want to talk about on the show and that kind of thing I asked you about your approach to limited, right? And how you approach it in a big picture. This is something that you think about a lot. And one of the things that came to your mind was that you like to draft for inevitability. Can you talk to us about what you meant by that?
Basically, I want to draft a deck that's going, if we both just flipped our decks over and got to put all of our lands and all of our spells in play, I win.
Okay.
I want to have powerful cards, and I want to be able to play a long game. Specifically because I feel if I'm a better player and I play a long game, I'm giving my opponent more opportunities to make mistakes. Also, I just want to have my cards do my work for me. I don't want to have any games that get out of hand because I make one combat mistake or something like that. I can just play bigger creatures and win that way, or play my bomb and win that way.
The decks you're describing also don't need to draw their cards in a particular order, whereas aggro decks definitely do.
Yeah, absolutely. I notice when I draft aggro decks, if I'm mulliganing a lot more because if I have my lands aren't perfect, or if I don't have a 2-drop, I have to mulligan. But a control deck or a mid-range deck that's playing a long game, as long as I have 3 lands with 4 spells, I'm usually going to keep in play.
So what do these decks looks like? What do these decks look like? What are some of the pieces that you want to put in? You're saying that these are controlling decks, so I think that we've done shows about that, and I think our audience has a reasonable idea of what that kind of deck would look like. But what are the check boxes that you're looking to hit so that you hit this inevitability?
First, it's much easier to do if you open some kind of bomb. That's just or some kind of gold card like say Baloth Null that just generates so much value later in the game that it's going to be hard for your opponent to recover. But I want to pick removal very highly so that the game, like, removal just makes the games go longer. If I keep staving off your threats, you're not going to be able to kill me. So removal and bombs, and then I want my creatures to be able to blank their creatures. So, for instance, if I have a 2/4 and they have 3/3/2s, their 3/3/2s are doing nothing.
Right. So and you've only used one card to effectively nullify 3 of theirs in that scenario.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So that's how I tend to play limited. I mean, I will definitely draft aggressive decks if that's what the format dictates, such as Zendikar or I forget the one that was the one after Return to Ravnica where you just had to draft. Yeah, you just had to draft like
blue, white, or red, white.
Yeah. No one can fight the tide forever.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, that's what I tend to do is try to find a way in the draft to sculpt my deck to be able to win long games and just have the most powerful deck. Kind of like drafting a sealed deck is how I would describe it.
Now, you mentioned removal as being one of the important things. Okay, that's, we know that. We know removal is important, but not all removal is created equally here, right? Like, you're saying you want the game to go on forever, and that if you were able to flip your deck over and they flip their deck over, that you would match up all the cards and you would come out the winner there. So how much more do you value unconditional removal or removal that can just kill anything on your opponent's side than, say, efficient removal, something like a reality hemorrhage or something like that?
Yeah, I definitely want, like catch-all removal. I want something that can, answer anything they have. So something like Oblivion Strike, Isolation Zone. I'm going to value those really highly. And then there's like expensive removal that's not quite as good, like Death's Grasp. I'm not going to value that as highly because if they play a 5/6 or something, then I just have this card in my hand that doesn't do anything. So it's really important to prioritize certain types of removal like that. Yeah, cheap removal is also important though. Something like Reality Hemorrhage isn't quite good enough, but something like Complete Disregard is a lot better. It kills a lot. It kills a lot of creatures in the format, anyways. It trades up on mana, which is really important. So
we're getting Ridley back. Oh yeah.
So yeah, I want to. The catch-all removal is the most important.
One of the things that we talk about on the show as well, Siggy, is defensive speed, which I know is kind of a weird saying, but with control decks, I found, and we've kind of again talked about on the podcast a few different times as well, that even if you're going to play a controlling deck, you need to be able to meet what your opponent's doing in the early parts of the game as well. How do you address that, right? Like if your opponent's going to go 2, 3, 4 on you, you can't just be all big 5 drops and removal spells. You need to be able to interact on the ground as well. So how do you approach that problem?
Yeah, I still want to draft my deck with a good curve. I just want my curve to stop later than theirs, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I want to play the bombs. Like, people seem to be opposed to playing 6 and 7 drops in the deck. I'm not. I'm looking for those cards. I want cards that are more powerful than 2 or 3 of their cards. That's the type of card advantage I'm going to get throughout the game if I play a 7 mana card and you don't. So I still want to draft a tight curve, and that allows me to also punish people who are draw poorly, don't draw the right color lands, whatever. So I'm still going to be able to close the game out on them. But I do want to go higher up in the curve than people are usually willing to do.
And this is why you like the more versatile cards where you prioritize those. You talked about Stalking Drone and Mav Kozilek as 2 cards that you kind of said these are my style of cards because they can interact with the board in a meaningful way, but also, like you said, if your opponent gets too greedy and they're missing land drops or they don't have the right colors, you can just hammer them with those type of cards too.
Yeah, absolutely. I want my creatures to be able to play offense and defense well. So I look for that, and I kind of just, I guess, intuitively evaluate that when I look at a card. But yeah, something like Slaughter Drone. I mean, if my opponent's not doing anything, it's a 2-mana 2/2. It's going to deal them a lot of damage if I play it on turn 2, and they haven't blocked it in 3 turns. But also later in the game, it's going to be able to trade up or prevent them from attacking and draw out the game a little longer. So maybe I can draw my bomb. And same with Stalking Drone. It shuts down 3 drops, 4 drops all on its own if you just have one colorless mana, and it only costs you 2 mana. So that's what I want my cards to do, ideally. So I'm going to evaluate those cards pretty high.
Okay. So yeah, so we were just, defensive speed can be an important thing for these inevitability style decks. I think that, one thing that people fall into that trap of drafting these kind of, I want to go bigger than you, is I think that they tend to undervalue mana sinks. So I wanted you to talk to us a little bit about where you prioritize, or what you think about, repeatable places to put your mana for value.
Cards like Bonesaw.
But Bonesaw wasn't the first mana sink that I had. I was thinking along the lines of, cards like Jiraga Auxiliary or, Prophet of Distortion, places where you can dump a lot of mana.
Valakut Invoker, that's right.
Yeah, Valakut Invoker is a great one. Yeah.
Yeah, Valakut Invoker is one of my favorite cards. It's reasonably well, plays defense reasonably well early and just takes over the game on its own later. I had a camera match, the Pro Tour against Owen, where I think you commented on, Marshall, that you thought it was odd that I was splashing Valakut Invoker. It's a card I'm willing to splash because it's how, not all the time. If my deck is lacking power, that card has a powerful effect later in the game. Because like if I have 10 mana in play, I want to be able to do something with it. And yeah, I value mana sinks pretty highly because of that. I want to always get a few of them if I can. They don't really make that many of them anymore.
Or they cost 8. 8 is a lot. Yeah. It's no
exactly.
joke.
Now, I have almost the exact same attitude. Basically, you can't control drawing 10 lands, but you can sure add a couple cards to your deck that make you win the game if you do draw 10 lands.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Especially if they, like Siggy said, if they do something, right? Like a 2/3 for 3 is an acceptable creature. It's not exciting, but it is acceptable when it's giving you that upside, especially that game-winning upside like Valakut Invoker gives you late in the game. So that makes a lot of sense. Now, I got to say, from the other side of the coin, Mike, what do you not want to see? Like, if you sit down and let's say you have a pretty good version, like a 7 out of 10 version of a Mike Sigrist style deck where you've got some good versatile creatures, you've got a good late game that you can rely on, you have just enough removal, maybe nothing incredible in any of these categories, but you've hit all the check marks on some level. What are you hoping not to see on the other side of the table when your opponent, starts playing?
Powerful mythic rares, I guess is what I'm going to say. I mean,
that's a legit answer. I mean,
yeah, I'm playing a long game and I'm hoping to have inevitability. And if they just play some card I can't deal with, then I'm going to have to play against it a lot because the game's going long. So it's going to be, over the course of the match, I'll see it probably 2 to 3 times if it gets that far. But like I had this issue come up in testing where I drafted this really cool 5-color deck with it had General
Tazri?
Yeah, General Tazri and a bunch of 5-color allies and all kinds of good removal. I had 3 rare Converge cards. I had Radiant Flames, Exert Influence, and Woodland Wanderer.
Oh, man. You did go deep.
Like 3 or 4 rare man lands. And then I just played against the Linvala and I couldn't win. So,
okay.
And like those kinds of cards I don't want to see. But it's very rare that your opponent has those cards. So it's easier to avoid that. But.
So when it comes to that, basically you're hoping to either not see the raw power level cards or maybe somebody who's gone one step slower than you even?
I think it can be easy to beat people who go one step slower because you can play these kind of niche cards that are only good in those circumstances, like Spell Shrivels and these weak counter spells that you usually don't want to add. You can just board them in. Mind rots, stuff like that. It's like we're playing sealed deck at that point, right? So you just want to put in those kinds of cards against them, and you can beat that stuff sometimes. It's just when they cast an unbeatable mythic rare, the game just ends. So.
Speaking of those type of cards, I have another sort of line of questioning, but a quick aside is, what's your approach during booster draft on cutting cards versus not cutting cards? I think different people have different, philosophies on that, and your specific mindset of going for these inevitability decks might change that. What's your thoughts on that?
I still don't. There's certain cards I might hate draft, but it comes down to opportunity cost. Like if I'm giving up a solid playable in my deck, I'm not going to hate draft. But if I'm going to take a replacement level card over it, I'm just going to hate draft the card if I can't beat it, because again, it's replacement level and I'll probably wheel it. So I'm not going to go out of my way to hate draft from people. But I do think it is correct when you're taking a card that's going to be like the 21st through 23rd card in your deck, depending on how many lands you play. Usually, that's another thing. I play more lands than people normally do. So,
you have to activate your Valakut Invoker somehow.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not going to take like just some random creature that I'm going to put in my deck, but I'm going to take a decent removal spell from my deck, or a decent creature that I is one of the middling better cards in my deck.
Now, you mentioned opportunity cost and speculating on it. That was actually where I wanted to go next anyway. So you said that this is...
Great segment, Marshall. Just excellent.
Thank you for calling that out, Luis, and ruining it. So you wanted to... you said that this is something that you employ as part of your kind of limited philosophy in general. Can you talk to us about what you meant by opportunity cost and speculation on it?
Well, when you're evaluating what card you're going to take, you always have to evaluate the next best option. And if it's something like a speculative card, like maybe I'll go into this color, I'm very unlikely to go in this color, I still could likely go in this color, those all change, how much more likely you are to take that card.
Okay.
And, as opposed to like whatever the next best thing is. But, usually you want to just stay in colors and not speculate on an off-color card. But I think people often do this wrong and just start taking, generic creatures for their deck and not speculating on a card that maybe they'll either splash or they might move into. I might open a mythic rare, a white mythic rare, and I have 4 black cards in my deck and 2 blue cards. And I'm going to take the white card over the, middling level blue card, because if I open a white mythic rare, I want to be able to move into that color.
I actually had a question. My guess is that you splash a lot more than most people do too. How often do you think you play 3 colors, like in this format, for example?
In this format, honestly, quite frequently. Again, I take the lands very highly because of that. There's also, like, if you noticed in this set, Oath specifically, there's not that many powerful cards. Like we said, the commons and the uncommons kind of just mashed together. There's not that many powerful uncommons to go with the like Oblivion Strike is probably better than most uncommons, or all uncommons. So I want to be able to play powerful cards if I get them, which is why I take the land so highly. So I do tend to splash a lot, especially in this format.
Holdout Settlement or Unknown Shores?
Unknown Shores.
That was a quick answer too. Why?
Yeah, this is the simplest way I could put it is I want to be able to keep hands where I can't cast spells. And Holdout Settlement, if I can't cast a spell, isn't going to help me cast a spell. Unknown Shores will.
Okay. Oh, that's pretty interesting. Now, another thing that you had brought up, this is kind of before we get into our Patreon questions, was pick orders, which is generally something, I mean, I think you're using it in the broad sense here, but, it's something that I tend to not put a whole lot of stock in, just because, once you get out of pack 1, pick 1, or just in the very earliest stages of the draft, the pick order sheet kind of starts to lose its value quickly as you start making adjustments based on, a host of factors during the course of a booster draft that aren't strictly based on what the most powerful card in the pack is. But that is something that you should know, right? Like, what do other people think the best green common is and that kind of thing, because it lets you read signals and that kind of thing. But one thing that you mentioned is that you like to adjust your rankings of cards based on what you think how other people rank the cards, which I think is really interesting because there seems to be almost a rush for everybody to just kind of get on the same page. But you like to actually go one step further than that and start to adjust it based on what other people are prioritizing.
Yeah. Generally, if you look at good decks, I mean, you're going to have a couple of, you don't want all the same common, right? So if you find out, for instance, that one of the Ultra Pro is big on that we weren't necessarily as big on in I forget the name of the set. Dragons, yeah. Dragons of
Tarkir, yeah.
Coat with Venom, for instance.
Yeah, I was just going to say it was Coat with Venom, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I remember they had Flatten and Coat with Venom about the same.
Yeah, so that. Even if you think that Coat with Venom is as good as Flatten there, I'm not going to take it there because I know I'm going to get them later, right? I find out the card's as good. That's good. I'm going to take them a little higher. So I want to take them a little higher than my opponents, but I don't want to take them early because it's not like signaling this the same way. Generally when I pick up a pack, I look at a pack and I find out what rarity's missing, like second pick. What rarity's missing? Okay, it's a common. What commons would they take over this uncommon and this rare? And then you can kind of get an idea that way when you keep going as to what colors they get, what colors they're in, or at least have some kind of educated guess, and move throughout the draft with them. If they're taking first pick Coat with Venoms, it's gonna confuse me. And I just don't even think you need to do it because people are just going to pass them to you later, and you're like, great, I got this really high value card later. So I want to take the Flatten over the Coat with Venom, even if I thought Coat with Venom was better, because I'll get those later and I won't get Flattens.
That's actually the inverse of something you mentioned earlier, which I've experienced too, right? Which is when the world at large values a card like, let's say, Saddleback Lagak higher than you do, you just never play with it because everyone else is willing to second pick it and you're willing to fifth pick it, so you just never get one.
Yeah, that's happened to me so many times on Magic Online. People ask me about a card, and I'm like, I don't know. I think it's okay, but I've never played with it. I played with it 2 times because I've seen it. I've had other people play against me, and I just don't evaluate that highly, so I never get it.
Yeah, that is funny.
Well, one of the big parts about getting an edge in draft is identifying places where you either think a card is better than the populace at large or worse than the populace at large, and then adjusting for that. Like, your example is perfect, right? You shouldn't, even if you think Coat of Venom is better, you don't need to take it. You're giving up value by taking it that highly because you can get them later. And likewise, knowing that you value a card less than everyone else means that you can send a bigger signal than you think. When you pass like a Saddleback, you don't maybe think much of it, but the person to your left is probably just snapping it up.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think we've all had that experience too, where you'll be on a stream or you'll be at the local store, and it'll be the 5th pick or something, and somebody's like, what is this doing in the pack? And they just completely freak out, and then maybe afterwards you go up and you say, what did you get 5th in that pack? And they'll be like, shoulder to shoulder. Can you believe it? And you're like, oh, well, that probably should be about there, and you just realize that not everybody's on the same page with how they view, these card evaluations. And yeah, I really like the idea of taking advantage of that information gap, whether it's you're overrating or underrating a card. It doesn't really matter. You can still get the value out of it.
Yeah, you get more value, I think, when you identify cards that are underrated. Overrated cards, just like, well, don't take them.
Yes, that is true. Okay, let's move on to our questions. We got a lot of questions for you here, Siggy, from our patrons. So, people that subscribe to the show on the Patreon, they have access to a thread that lets them ask you questions directly.
And some people who don't subscribe still have access to questions.
Yeah, so we'll start with this longtime subscriber. He says...
long subscriber Vargas.
Yes. So Luis put his own question in, even though he doesn't actually subscribe to the podcast. But his question I'm going to ask you now, and I'm going to throw in a couple of other questions because I think that they all are around the same idea or thought process. And so I kind of lump them together. But LSV says, you have played Magic for a long time, but last season you really went deep. You had 2 PT top 8s and 1 player of the year. Any idea why you had such a successful year? Did you make any changes in preparation that you think account for that? And he also notes that luck is an acceptable answer. And then John McCullough says, how did you know when you were just starting out to be a pro player? How did you know that you were going to become one? Michael Bencomo says, how did you decide to become a professional Magic player? How did you know? And Daniel Magyar says, what were the things that you consciously did or learned that were major contributing factors to your breakthrough over your Magic career? So, these I think are all kind of you transitioning into full-time professional Magic player mode. And if there was anything that changed with you, either leading up to it or after it.
To answer Luis's question first, I started preparing. That was a huge thing. I when I played a while, like I took a long break, but before when I played, I would be one of the better players in my area and win an occasional PTQ, show up for the Pro Tour, having not played a game with my deck or tested any format at all, and just kind of played. And obviously these are the best players in the world. You're not going to win doing that. When I came back, I started to take it a little more seriously. I started preparing. I still wasn't doing it as much as I am now. It really, when I got put on a face-to-face, Shields kind of vouched for me. No one knew who I was, and Shields was like, he's a really good player. Try to get him onto the team, and I think he'll help us out a little bit. Yeah. And so they're like, all right, Shields never asked for anyone to be on the team, so we'll try him out. And the fit, it worked. It seemed to be a good fit. So I now fly out to wherever the Pro Tour is and test for 2 weeks as opposed to not playing any games before the Pro Tour. So
I'd like to think that our team playing you at GP Providence a couple years ago is really what lit the fire.
Yeah, that's what it was.
So Luis has given you the options of either it's because of him or luck.
I owe everything I have to Luis.
Yeah, well, don't we all?
Get that on record.
Yeah, I remember when you won. What GP was it? Was it Atlantic City?
DC,
that's what it was. Yeah, your first win. And I did the winner interview with you there, and I thought, he was a really nice dude. And everybody's like, oh yeah, he's been playing forever. And I thought, oh, that's cool. That's one of the veteran players. Finally gets there and gets the big GP win. And then, but I did not anticipate that you would run it up. I didn't know that you would be making that transition into full time, and all of a sudden I was going to see you at everything, winning everything forever. So I thought that was really cool.
That was Hayne always says that was credited to face, even though I had never tested with him or anything. That's right when they added me to the team.
Oh, gotcha.
I literally met them for the first time at that tournament, and so he takes all the credit for that.
Wow. So it's all about Alexander Hayne and Luis Scott-Vargas. All right. Dana Billings wanted to know, he says, hey, Mike, what's your favorite limited draft format of all time and why? And then this is also from Kane Drost, also asks a similar question of what's your favorite limited format outside of the usual suspects like Innistrad and Cube, kind of like how Luis likes Kamigawa was his example. So what do you like? What's your all-timer?
My answer is not going to be very popular. Mercadian Masks is my favorite.
What? Are you crazy? Are you insane, dude? I've drafted that format. It was one of the most miserable experiences of my life.
I'm going to tell you a fact that may sound like a negative, but is a huge upside. When they released Mercadian Masks block on Magic Online, I did a bunch of drafts. I did a lot, and I won about 40% of them due to my opponent's timing out.
And by the way, winning 40% of drafts is a massive win percentage, just in case.
No. That was 40% of my match wins were to timeouts.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, that's even worse, though.
And not because anything weird happened, just because all the games are so long, there's so many on-the-board tricks.
No way to win.
It's all 2-3s and 2-1s, and 3-3 is huge in that format. God.
So what kind of a sick human are you, Siggy, to that's your favorite format?
I really like Trouble Tealer.
What does that do?
One of the most aggravating cards to play against in Limited. It's 2 and a white for a 1/2. And sacrifice a land, prevent 2 damage to target creature or player.
In a format where everything is 2/3.
Sigrist, you are demented, dude. That is just messed up, man. Hey, those coalition things weren't in that set, were they?
No, the flag bearers.
Yeah, God, those.
No.
Speaking of most annoying limited cards ever. Anyway, I'll digress. I digress, I should say, on that one. All right. Andy Rogers, who always asks really good questions, I have to say. Andy says, when you sit down to draft, does your strategy change if you need a 3-0 to survive in the tournament versus drafting a solid deck to protect a safe record? This comes up at GPs, but primarily comes up at the Pro Tour, right? Where you sit down for day 2 and, let's say that you have to rattle off you have to go undefeated or close to undefeated to make top 8 versus you had a really good day 1, you're X and 1. And if somebody said, hey, I'll hand you a 2-1 right now, do you take it? That kind of thing. Do you actually change your draft strategy based on your record in the tournament?
No, the one thing I'd say I do maybe a little more is I'm more willing to hate draft something like some kind of mythic rare that I can't beat or something.
In which scenario?
If I need to 3-0, I will hate draft like a mythic rare I can't beat or something.
Oh, okay.
A little higher than I would otherwise. Like I said, if there's a good card for my deck, I'm usually going to take it. I'll like drop the scale a little bit on what I'm willing to take over the mythic rare.
But you're not trying to
increase the scale. Excuse me.
Sure.
No, I'm not gonna like change what I'm doing at all. No, I'm not gonna go for any kind of high variance play or anything. The reality of it is, honestly, that kind of stuff doesn't come up that much because I'm still playing for pro points, right? So I still don't want to just throw away my whole tournament that I played in, to just to try to get the 3-0 to make top 8 when, I could go 12-3 or whatever. So Wizards does a good job in, providing you with incentives to have, at every record. So the times that would come up would be like the last Grand Prix of the year, the last Pro Tour, or something like that. But I wouldn't change my strategy at all, other than maybe hate drafting a card that I can't beat a little lighter than I normally would.
Okay. Michael Obi says, hey, Mike, I'm fairly new to Magic. I started playing in December of 2014, and my goal right now is to win a GPT. That said, I work full-time, and my wife and I are having our first child in July. Do you have any advice on how to improve when dealing with less prep and training time than you might like? And also, he says, LSV, any advice to a soon-to-be nerd parent? Though I think I'll redirect that one over to Sigrist.
Well, just ask him. He's the person I would also be asking. So this is a great question.
Yeah. So what would you tell Michael here, as he's still in the earlier stages of moving up in his Magic development here, but is going to be facing parenthood and still trying to meet those goals?
Something I did to I just talk to people. I mean, even if it's just a lot of the pro players are nice. You can ask them questions. Just try to interact with people who are better than you. You don't need to necessarily play to you can theory craft a lot in Magic and understand things and just talk about it, and you'll get better. Being a nerd parent, I haven't figured it out yet. It's been about 7 months, and it's pretty tough. The amount of Magic I've played has gone down dramatically since they've been born. So.
Yeah, and by the way, you did hear that right. He said they.
Yeah.
Mike, supremely devoted to value, went for the 2-for-1 when it came to having kids.
That is true.
Well played, sir. Yeah, so you're still figuring that whole thing out, though, trying to get that balance.
Yeah, it's okay. Like when they're young, it's tough. When they get a little older, like right now, they're fine. They play together. I can't speak to one kid, so but mine, play together. They interact a little bit, and I can just kind of play. I play a lot of leagues on Magic Online because I can't sit down and devote 4 or 5 hours to drafts and constructed. So the leagues are perfect because you can play 1 or 2 matches, and then when they need to be taken care of, you just go do that, and then you can come back to it if you need to.
Yeah, that's actually really good advice for Michael as well, because if Michael's looking to win a GPT, it's going to be sealed, right?
Yeah.
So there you go. This is a really straightforward question, but I think it could tap into something a little more broad. Celso Tavora says, what do you do when you have a sealed pool that is low on removal? Before like throwing your mouse through the through the window. I mean, because look, Celso here has certainly recognized a problematic scenario here, right? But on the show we try to talk about, look, if something bad happens, that's fine. You have to be willing to accept that. But the good players will try to find their edge wherever they can find it, even if it's not in a particularly great scenario like this one. So, if you open up a pool and you've just got like one mediocre removal spell or two, or maybe it's in colors that you're not going to play, you do have to start taking some actions, right? You can't just build the same type of deck that you always do.
I tend to try to go over the top in that scenario. That actually happened to me Grand Prix Montreal, which was the other limited Grand Prix I won. I had anyone can attest who saw it. My deck was really bad, and all I did was I just played. It was in dragons. I just played big splashy dragons and tried to go over the top of people. That I think is the best way to, like, if you can't kill their threats, you have to have bigger threats.
Okay, yeah, because I know some people try to go under. They'll be like, all right, I'm going to be faster. I'm just going to curve out and rely on my deck to do that. And I found that generally doesn't work. Is that your experience as well?
Yeah, I really don't like trying to go underneath people without removal. It's tough. Like if
they play a 2/4.
Yeah, exactly. If they play a giant mantis, what are you going to do?
Right.
You're just going to have 4 cards that don't do anything. So yeah, I don't want to go try to go underneath people if I don't have removal. You'd have to have a lot of combat tricks to be able to quality combat tricks too, not bad ones.
But combat tricks do kind of let you substitute. Like a crappy red-white deck with 5 combat tricks and a really good curve could beat a good a good sealed deck, but still rather not.
That is true, and people do get pretty greedy and sealed as well. And I have to say that Mike, your approach to limited definitely falls at least somewhat in line with the way the way Luis and I do. And I find that is interesting when you do draft the aggressive deck. We're used to playing a slower, more inevitability based deck as well. And that means that our opponents, when they play slow, clunky decks, they get to just sort of be around and find their mana and get up to the big spells as well. And we're trying to set ourselves up to win that game. But when you play that red-white aggressive deck in sealed or whatever, that doesn't come up very often, but when you feel forced to do it, you actually get to punish your opponent, for the splashes and for the big 7 drops and for that kind of stuff. And you can really apply a lot of heat. But yeah, you do need either removal or really good combat tricks. And even then, I wouldn't feel happy about it. But yeah, in the interest of scooping up some of that value.
I have a question from a listener. Mike, this has to do with the last Grand Prix Detroit, the team won.
Okay.
Who's the listener, Luis? Maybe we could say their name on the show.
Why did you guys choose to build a sealed deck with 7 Orchard Spirits?
Because they worked really well with my Eyeblight Massacres. Is that the correct answer?
That is.
Are we going to give context to this, or just going to leave it?
Context isn't Luis's forte when it comes to throwing people under the bus.
Owen, I asked Owen. He was a guest on the show a month ago now, and he actually had an incredibly good episode. And I was like, hey, Owen, what should I ask Siggy? He was like, ask him why he built a GP Detroit sealed deck with so many Orchard Spirits. So, I wonder if you can explain the rest why he wanted me to ask you that question.
He was aggravated because one game I cast an Eyeblight Massacre, and I had later followed it up with an Orchard Spirit. And he's like, why do you have those 2 cards in the same deck? Why do you have so many Orchard Spirits? And I said, well, I only have 1 Orchard Spirit. It's the only creature that dies, and it's because I have this Woodland Bellower or whatever to search for it. So yeah, so every time he sees me now and we talk about Team Sealed, he always says, "Oh, you have 3 Orchard Spirits and 3 Eyeblight Massacres again," or the number always goes up.
Owen just doesn't like decks without synergy. It's actually really funny, like to bring it, kind of reel it back to an actual point. The fact that in Team Sealed, Owen saw both those cards and just thought it couldn't be correct to have both of them in your deck is interesting. That shows how much your Team Sealed decks need to be built with synergy in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. But I also did have the creature synergy, which is one of the reasons I wanted to be able to get a evasive threat off the Woodland Bellower. So there was synergies involved that he just didn't take account for. Yeah. But yeah,
third and 4th Orchards to back up the first 2.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. Soren Lon Sloth says, hello, Mike. What card evaluations from Oath of the Gatewatch and Battle for Zendikar do you think most players are wrong about?
Oof.
Is there any? Go ahead.
What card evaluations most players are wrong about?
Yeah, you know, I think that
what cards do you value higher than the average person?
Yeah. Or do you think, yeah, exactly. Do you value higher? Do you think that people are looking at it like, wow, this card's amazing, and you're like, no?
What cards do you think people play that are really bad?
Yeah.
The people, Goblin Pikers? I see a fair amount of those in people's decks, I guess. I don't know.
Those are just 2-mana 2/1s that have minor to no upside.
Yeah. There's not that many cards that are just actively bad, though, that people play. Here's a good answer. Anytime, it's kind of more general though. Anytime you put a creature in your deck that has no text, it's just flavor text, you made a mistake. You've done something very wrong.
You're not a Brood Hunter Worm fan?
Well,
no.
Does it depend on the flavor text?
What?
Does it depend on how good the flavor text is?
No.
No. Podcast.
Well, the creature should always have some kind of ability if it's in your deck. I don't understand how you can draft, whatever it is, 42 cards and still end up with whatever it is. Rotting Mastodon is the one I always bring up. But
3-mana 3/3s are actual playable cards.
Yeah, they don't really have that many anymore though.
No.
Yeah, they've kind of gone a different way with vanilla creatures, but I don't know. Sometimes they fool you with they have some kind of ridiculous ability that doesn't do anything, but that also counts as nothing but flavor text, like the Kazul Toll Collector or whatever. The equip for 3 guy.
Yeah, bone solids to himself for 0.
They put an ability on it to trick you into trying to play with him. They're trying to do something with him, but he actually just has no ability.
Yeah, no text. So I guess your favorite flavor of ice cream is not vanilla then?
No,
right.
No.
I can guess that. Next, we've got a question from Timothy Rice, who says, "Hi, Mike. What is something that you do when playing Magic that you think is unique to yourself?" And he says as well, "What do you think is your biggest weakness when it comes to Magic?"
It could be the same thing.
My biggest weakness is definitely I guess my focus is what I would say. I'm another player I know who tends to have something like this that's pretty good as PV, where we just miss something sometimes, and that happens to me every now and then. I'll lose my focus, and I'll just be like, "Oh, that guy has first strike from your Enoch Bonkin or whatever," and I'll just make some egregious mistake that I wouldn't make usually. But something I do that's unique.
Yeah, just do you see that when let's say you're in your limited meeting with the rest of the team or whatever, and everybody's kind of saying the same thing, and you're thinking in your head, I don't actually think of it that way. Is there anything that differentiates you in that regard?
Yeah, Luis can attest to this. I'm actually, I don't want to say silent in our meetings, but I tend to disagree with a lot of stuff in our meetings. So there's a lot of things that are different. There's like a group of people who highly value like generic creatures and combat tricks and stuff, and I'm just outside of that. I like I said, I draft in this inevitability manner, and I don't really, try to just draft low curve. Like lead by example, that card. A lot of people love that card. I feel like I've done something really wrong if it ends up in my deck.
I remember our last limited meeting when there's just like a bunch of people talking about how much they like the white green support aggro deck, and you're just sitting there thinking like, I'm not going to ever draft this deck.
yeah, that's exactly what I was doing. I mean, like if I have to, I will. It's like a fail safe. Like if like my draft starts to go poorly early, I know I can always jump into that, and my deck will be okay. But I don't think I'm going to 3-0 that often with it.
Yeah, I mean, do you feel like you limit yourself in that way?
No, I don't.
Mean? Like if you're, think about it in terms of constructed, right? You want to be able to pick up any deck and play it proficiently, no matter what style it is. If mono red's the best choice for a tournament, you want to be able to play that. If it's control, it's control. That does carry over to limited as well, where you need to be able to draft different styles and types of deck, different color combinations. Do you feel like you put yourself in a corner if you stick to your sort of overall game plan too much, or can you adjust out of it if you need to?
Oh no, I'm very flexible. I'm definitely willing to just move into those decks, and it probably happens more often than I realize. Mm-hmm. But it's not my goal going to the draft. My goal is limited these days. The cards are just so good that I just want to win with these powerful rares and stuff that they're printing, and it makes it so much easier than trying to just grind people out with 2/2s and 3/3s with a combat trick. It's very easy to play against those decks too. And so I want to be able to just win with powerful cards, especially at the pro level where everyone's playing really well. I don't want to have to limit myself and just lose to a powerful card. I want to be the one winning with the powerful card.
Okay. So Aaron Bochenek says, in your opinion, how do you think Battle for Zendikar block limited in general stacks up with others? Above average? Below average?
The block is good. I do enjoy this set. I think I'd say about average. I tend to like older, slower formats better. Mm-hmm. But this one is kind of like that. There's a lot of long games. There's also good aggressive decks. So it's decent. As far as Battle for Zendikar only, I hated it. I thought it's one of the worst. Could be the worst format I've ever played. It was just really busy, and it was missing a color for some reason. They decided not to print a color of cards, and yeah,
there was some, it was weird. I ended up playing that a lot, and normally that is my litmus test, is just do I keep playing a format? Because I found the same issues with Battle for Zendikar as a set. It felt disheveled. It felt like some of the things didn't really hit home, and green being bad, so bad made it kind of awkward. Yet I still played it, and we ended up I chatted with Luis about it, and kind of coming to the conclusion that I actually ended up enjoying the gameplay of that format quite a bit. The drafting maybe wasn't as good as some other sets, so I don't know. It's weird. It kind of taught me something about what I would think is that I would need really good draft experience for the the archetypes to come together, the colors to be balanced, all that kind of stuff. And it didn't. I ended up liking it. It was weird.
Yeah, Battle for Zendikar overperformed, I think.
Yeah. All right. Daniel Rhodes wants to know, what cards in Oath draw you to play less played color combinations? Are you willing to go down the Reflector Mage path to play blue-white?
Yeah. I don't think I'm not as low in blue-white as you guys are.
Where do you have it at?
I think it's okay.
Yeah, you think it's okay?
But it's mainly for it's going to be like a heavy blue deck for the most part, and then I just add Reflector Mages and Isolation Zones. I had a deck like that at the PT. My deck was just Isolation Zones, Stasis Snare, Reflector Mage, and blue cards. And,
okay. No, that makes sense.
Yeah, just kind of light splash the gold cards or something like that, because blue in with the lands and all that stuff, it's not extremely deep, but it was extremely underdrafted, I think, at the Pro Tour. Uh-huh. So I got like a 13th pick Cultivator Drone or something in that draft, and it just
whoa,
was just able to lightly splash white even though there were double white cards.
It does beg the question, what do you think the worst color pair is? And how much worse do you think it is than the rest of the pack?
Off the top of my head, I would say blue-green, but I'm not entirely sure if I'm just missing something. But I think blue-green. That's what I would say.
And are there any that you just won't play, where you're just like, no, I'm off it, I'm not doing it?
No, blue-green is the closest to it because, again, it doesn't have great removal, and but. I'm usually going to shy away from color combinations that don't have removal in them at all. But that's, I think, yeah, I'd still play it because you can still get some good tempo going, and you have a good curve of creatures. You get to match the drones like Louis said, which is a good way to win, is have the good cheap creatures and just tempo them out. Yeah. So you don't need removal, but.
All right, one more question from Daniel O'Connor. Well, I guess he actually asked you two questions. He says, what's one aspect of Magic that you would change? And also, what would you like the future of Magic to look like?
Okay, so one thing I would like to change, specifically in Limited, is I want creatures with repeatable abilities back. Like in the Yeah. Or like, you don't need to go as far as Trouble Hill, but like Sanctum Custodian or Prodigal Sorcerer, those kind of, they completely took them out of the commons. They added them back here for the first time in a while with Cohort though, and that's not nearly as good. But yeah, like Tappers and stuff like that.
It's still pretty good in the format, right? Like,
yeah.
Look at Cohort ended up being quite good, which I think says something about it.
Yeah, it is good. But I just want like Master Decoy back.
I wouldn't hold my breath on that one, Mike.
Yeah, I'm just saying. Yeah, like for forever now, I feel like I've just been, the best commons are always removal spells instead of like you can't take a creature over them anymore because they're just creatures. They don't really do anything other than attack. I mean, some of them have comes into play effects or whatever, but yeah, I want repeatable creatures back.
And what would you like the future of Magic to look like? I mean, you're a full-time professional player, so, you're going to be playing in that lens.
I think I would like the future of Magic to look exactly like last year. Is that possible? Can we do that?
Great answer. Well played. That is fantastic. Yes, I'll put it in order for that immediately. Great job, Mike. Thanks so much for taking the time to come with us on the podcast. It was a great interview, and I know our listeners are going to get a lot out of what you said. If they want to catch up with you on, maybe social media or something like that, where can they find you?
Twitter, Facebook, and I write now. For StarCityGames.com.
Okay, and where can they find you on Twitter? What's your name?
MSigrist83 or at MSigrist83.
Okay, I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well for anybody that wants to give Mike a follow, and you can catch up with him. And yeah, thanks again, Mike. I appreciate you taking the time. Hopefully, we can have you back on the show sometime soon.
Yeah, thanks. I really appreciate it.
That will do it for the show. I want to remind you that Limited Resources is brought to you by channelfireball.com. Make sure you check them out for awesome free content and a full selection of single sealed product and supplies. If you want to find us on social media, I'm Marshall_LR and Luis is LSV. You can contact us via email as well if you have something a little longer. That's lr@lrcast.com. And you can find links to everything related to the podcast on lrcast.com. That will do it. Thanks again to Mike Sigrist, our special guest, and we'll be back to our regularly scheduled programming next week.
So, Marshall, last week you wrote about fond memories of Innistrad draft.
I did, yeah.
You returned in anticipation of, Shadows over Innistrad, but I don't want the listeners to think that Innistrad got everything right. So I have put together a list of things I had issue with from the original Innistrad. Oh. You will get to listen to me read out this list.
All right.
This is remembering the top 5 flavor fails from the original Innistrad.
That's what it
is. There are some serious problems here.
See, I thought we were going to go for like Butcher's Cleaver, this whole thing.
Well, that's mentioned, but for a different reason than you think.
Oh, okay. All right.
Well, we'll start with number 5, and that's Jar of Eyeballs. It gets 2 eye counters no matter what dies. Some creatures have more eyes, some have less. Clearly, it should not get two eye counters regardless of what the creature is that's dying. And if an ooze dies, why are you getting any eye counters? Oozes don't have eyes.
Sigrist, I'm sorry for this, by the way.
I'm enjoying it.
Well, buckle in, because it's not getting any better from here.
I have lengthy notes, just so we're clear. Number 4 is the interaction of Sever the Bloodline and Bloodline Keeper. So, Sever the Bloodline clearly means you kill all creatures with the same name, the same bloodline. And Bloodline Keeper is the progenitor of all vampires. So it's literally in the title that this is the keeper of the bloodline. The blood from this vampire flows through all other vampires, yet Sever the Bloodline only kills Bloodline Keeper. That doesn't make any sense.
We're just aghast over here, Luis.
Bloodghast? Number 3, this relates to your previous point. It's Invisible Stalker. There's multiple problems with Invisible Stalker, by the way. And that's not even mentioning the fact that he ruined games. The first one is that you see a jacket and a hat, but you don't see a pants or a shirt. So are we trying to say that the Invisible Stalker is just naked and wearing a jacket and a hat? Like, I don't understand. Like, it's first of all, it looks very cold out. So if it's just wearing a jacket and a hat, this guy is
literally raining.
can't be comfortable. The second problem, because that's very implausible, by the way, is that if you was carrying a Butcher's Cleaver or a Rune Chanter's Bike, you would be able to see them. You can see the jacket. You can see the hat. So how exactly is this guy invisible? And the whole concept just doesn't make any sense. So moving on to the more serious problems, Blazing Torch did not destroy One-Eyed Scarecrow. This is one of the most egregious. If you throw a Blazing Torch at a One-Eyed Scarecrow, now Blazing Torch deals 2 damage, One-Eyed Scarecrow is a 2/3. How would it not kill it? What exactly is a Blazing Torch for? It's not even just like a mildly lit torch. It's actually a blazing torch. It's
torch.
It's explicit as to what the torch is, and the Scarecrow part is very clear. So how this doesn't destroy that is beyond me. And the last and worst, I believe, is that Urgent Exorcism had no interaction with Unholy Fiend. So Cloistered Youth is the 1/1 that flips into Unholy Fiend. This is clearly a case of possession. Yet Urgent Exorcism doesn't do anything to it. It can't even target it. So that just throws every kind of lore involving exorcists and possession and fiends just right into the garbage. There's just literally no respect for any of that, pretty well documented interaction. So let's not forget that Innistrad had some pretty severe problems, and hopefully in Shadows over Innistrad, there's some fixes to these.